Spotlight 2017 comes to you every Thursday night and Sunday night as well. So today was the World AIDS Day, and Kenya marked the rest of the world in marking the day. But just how bad is the HIV situation on the ground, and is anyone doing anything about it? KTN News reporter Timothy Otieno went to Homabay County, which is ranked as having the highest prevalence rate in the entire country. You know, is that special report, Fissures of Pain, which documents the struggles of elderly widows taking care of their grandchildren, and that problem now famously known as sex for fish.
The dry and dusty road of the Homa Bay Highway, one that leads you to this remote village in Karachuonyo constituency. This area has now become the epicenter of a pervasive virus sweeping swiftly across Homabay County. The scattered homesteads all share a unifying history that the HIV and AIDS pandemic has nearly wiped out this entire community. In Homa Bay County, there are 26% new HIV infections recorded every year. This is 4.6 times higher than the national rate of 6%. Homa Bay bears the greatest burden of the disease in Kenya. When we arrived here, many narrated personal stories of what those numbers have meant to them, like 52-year-old George Onyango, who was born and raised here in the village of Kagworo.
Huku juu kuna boma yenye bwana alikufa, bibi akabaki, akawekwa kwa dawa, akawacha dawa. Baada ya kuacha dawa, alipelekwa hospitalini. Sasa kuwekwa kwa dawa nyingine mpya hakuwezekana, kafa. Ni wiki moja tu yenye ilipita. Na hata hapa chini karibu na hii masini ya chini kuna mama mmoja pia alifariki juu ya ugonjwa ya ukimwi. Kutembea kwake kuenda kuchukua dawa ilikuwa ngumu, na sasa hakuwa kama nataka amueleze mtu aende amletee hizo dawa. Unaona?
So maybe George, if I could ask, within this whole area, this radius here of 50 meters by 50 meters, how many households can you count and say has lost a family member through HIV/AIDS?
Almost 10 or 20. Karibu maboma 20. Ninahakikisha.
So this disease, it's almost wiping out an entire village.
An entire village. Kila boma mpaka tupate mtu amefariki hapo kwa juu ya ugonjwa ya ukimwi.
You see, George is not your ordinary health worker. He, like the rest of the villagers, has borne the brunt of HIV and AIDS. 4 of his brothers have died of the disease. He grew up in a humble home, barely got any education, but George has a wealth of information on HIV.
Hizi zilikuwa mtungi zake za maji.
Having spent 5 years in community policy formulation, he has earned the moniker Jatelo, which means a leader. Homa Bay County, statistics show it still has a very high rate of HIV and AIDS prevalence. As a community-based worker, how do you explain this?
Vile ninaweza kusema, hii inatusumbua hata sisi. Kwa vile tunafanya testing kila mwezi, na tukitembea kwa boma, hatupati new infection. Unaona? Inaonekana ya kwamba wenye walisapata ugonjwa walikuwa wanachukua madawa kwa hospitali zingine, na akisa default kuenda kwa hiyo hospitali, anarudi anaenda kwa hospitali ingine, anajiandikiza mpya. Hii ndio inafanya namba ya Homa Bay iwe juu.
Despite the many cases of double registration among those infected, which he attributes to the high numbers witnessed, that explanation may not suffice for many here. So George, the health worker who took us around this area, tells us that there are about 9,000 residents in this locality. Now, between the village of Kagworo, where we were, and Koliech, where we are right now, the story is pretty much the same. Very little human contact. the scourge of the HIV and AIDS virus here predominant. Now, right now, I stand aside one of the latest victims of that scourge who passed away just 2 weeks ago, leaving behind yet another empty homestead. We find this young girl stunned in silence next to a freshly dug grave. We'll call her Jane, not her real name. George explains that underneath the pile of dirt rests the 12-year-old's mother, yet another victim of HIV and AIDS.
She was sick. Then she was taken to the hospital. She was discharged, but on her way back, she died on the roadside.
The girl now lives with a 90-year-old grandmother, Cyprina Omolo, but she's too old, slowly losing her sight, and in dire need of a caregiver herself. Problem is, all her children have died from HIV. Jane's mother, as well as her 41-year-old son, are both gone. Now, the woman who has lived close to 10 decades is left to fend for her grandchild.
I'm not sure what killed her. I just heard she's unwell and took her to hospital. It could well be AIDS.
The story is pretty much similar for 82-year-old Agatha Onditi, who lost 4 of her 5 children to the deadly disease.
Mtoto yangu nakufa ukimwi na bibi yake. Nawacha watoto 5. Sasa mimi na shida kabisa. Hata chakula kuna. Sasa mimi nasikia mbaya kabisa. Siwezi kulima kwa shamba. Mimi nachoka.
But lack of strength is not her only concern. She says she has no cattle and relies mainly on farming for livelihood. But with the rains remaining scarce in this area, Agatha faces an uncertain future. Today is the memorial of one of her sons' death. Charles Otieno, who passed away 6 years ago, left behind a 16-year-old daughter, one among 5 grandchildren now under the care of Agatha.
Mimi nasikia mbaya. Kwa shida. Kama mimi iko na watoto 5, sasa nafanya nini?
That a majority of those dying of the infection are in their middle age is not in question. This worrying trend, however, is resulting in shifting responsibility to the old folk left to raise their orphaned grandchildren.
It's only God who can assist me now. I've left it to Him. I'll just continue staying with her.
A total of 158,000 people live with AIDS in Homa Bay County, with 15,000 new infections every year. And with about 49% of residents living below the poverty line, antiretroviral drugs are an extra expense. Some are too poor to afford even one decent meal a day, required to sustain the body and battle the strong effects of the drugs. Karen, a community health worker, explains another factor contributing to the high numbers of infection.
Kwa hii jua hakuna chakula vizuri. Sasa mtu anayesamesa dawa na akose chakula ya kukula. Sasa itafanya mtu atafute mpango wa kando ili apate chakula saidie naye watoto. Saa zingine bwana yake amekufa, saa zingine bwana yake amewacha hapo na watoto. Sasa hawezi vile kusaidiwa hawa watoto ni ngumu.
It is on the shorelines of Lake Victoria where many say is the genesis of the HIV and AIDS pandemic in this region. Here, young men, fishermen in particular, and young women engage in a very interesting and dangerous trade, one of fish for sex. The trade, commonly referred to as jaboya in these parts of the country, is what many, including medics, attribute to the rise in HIV and AIDS infections.
Per month we have to get some new infections or new people getting into the system. Yeah. The number is variable.
At this periphery between land and water, fish is not the only commodity on sale.
Mtu bwana yake akisa kufa, anaona tu area aende kwa barini, atapata watu huko wengi. Sasa akienda kwa barini, anakuja na mtu mwingine hapa, naitwa jaboya hii. Na ajui hiyo jaboya amebeba nini. Sasa zingine bwana yake alikufa na hiyo ugonjwa na kujua. Sasa anaendelea na huyu na ile nyingine. Sasa hiyo ugonjwa inaongezeka nyingi sana.
The women here engage in sexual relationships with the fishermen just to get their daily shoal of fish. For a woman here, it doesn't matter how much you have. If you can't back up your sail in bed, then you go home hungry.
Once the boat is almost reaching that point, the person has to communicate with the woman. Then after that, he sells the fish to that woman. Then they go and spend elsewhere without the knowledge of the husband of that, without the husband of the woman whom he has taken.
Basically, women are they like the receiving end. They don't have the safe negotiating skills in terms of using condom. For instance, you know your man is having extramarital affairs, but when he comes at home, you don't have that bargaining power that I need to protect myself.
It is such situations that led this lady, whom we'll call Maria, to sell herself to a fisherman who then may have infected her with the HIV virus.
Ukienda huko, saa zingine kama unaenda kununua samaki, unapata watu wengi huko. Anasema, madam, we ni mzuri. Unaongea na yeye. Unapata kitu kidogo hata samaki saa zingine ni pesa. Naenda kununua gorogoro huko kwa nini, unasiaga unakula. Hiyo ndio maisha sasa.
Hautaogopa kwamba unamwambukiza labda polisi ama hiyo hata ya ajali?
Sahi, sitaogopa. Ndio nikule.
After her diagnosis 4 years ago, Maria's husband abandoned her, leaving behind 9 children for the 34-year-old to take care of.
Saa zingine watoto wanaongea, mama nini, mama nataka pesa, uko na stress mengi. Unasema tu wacha niwache hii dawa, nikufe. Na kifa hakuna, unakonda tu, unasikia tu vibaya.
This young girl under Maria's care is already showing signs that she could be possibly infected. But Maria says she lacks funds to take her to a proper medical center for screening. When you have 9 mouths to feed, issues such as medicine take a back seat in this village. Doctors insist prostituting for fish could be one way that the virus is spreading rapidly. Another reason is the cultural practice of wife inheritance. We met this woman whose first husband died in 2001. She says she became infected with AIDS in 2008 after her second husband died from the same disease.
Nilistuka, nilitetemeka.
She has been living under medication since, but not without increasing resistance from residents here.
Wenyeji wa hili kijiji walichoma nyumba yako kwa sababu hawako wanakutaka uendelee kuishi ndani.
Kwa maana bwana yangu amekufa. Sasa walikuwa wanataka wa mchanga wabakie.
Na sasa ati walikueleza ati wanangoja ile siku utakufa
ndio. Kwa maana mimi si niliitwa hata ni maiti. Wewe ni maiti, sasa unafanya nini hapo na wewe ni maiti?
The reality of the situation in this village, perhaps amplified by the growing number of deserted homes like this one, which has no ounce of life left, only a marked grave.
Alafu bibi yake akafariki 2015.
But amongst the despair stands soldiers of hope determined to keep up the fight against HIV and AIDS.
Kuna matumaini kwamba siku moja hii janga la ukimwi litapungua katika hii eneo.
Vile tunajua, kwa vile tunawafundisha watu usiku na mchana, watu wakikamata mawaidha yenye tunawapewa, hii janga itamaliza, itakwisha.
Soldiers like 43-year-old Karen Adhiambo, who serves this community as a health worker. A job she does without pay.
Bwana yangu alikufa, nilikuwa na mama mwingine naitwa Nyeka hapa. Yeye alikufa na bwana yangu. Sasa nikaendelea kutumia dawa. Nikaenda hospitali huko Gendia, nikapata kama watu zimejaa huko. Sasa ningesema afadhali nikuwe na hawa free ili wajue hali yangu. Nifundishe hawa wameze dawa ndio waongeze maisha yao.
Karen organizes such forums where she educates her peers on the dangers of having unprotected sex. Her work may be a drop in the ocean, but only those who dare to speak up now may save the next generation of this community. Timothy Otieno,